secured entrepreneurs. Okay, here we go. I told you all that I was going to come back and talk about the indictment. Why? Because you all have been going crazy in the email. Okay, now in this video, Ms. Aurorah is going to answer your questions about the indictment. And I want to make it very clear that I told all of you who emailed that I was not going to say anything. I wasn't going to make any comments. I wasn't going to make a video about it. I wasn't going to discuss it until we actually heard the charges. Okay, so now what happened? The district attorney came out and let everyone know exactly why it is this thing was happening. Okay, let me just get into it. For those of you who do not know who I am Miss Aurorah Dey, and this is the Secured Entrepreneur Movement. Okay, so first, because we're all adults here, we're having grown conversation on this channel, real conversation on this channel. Okay, so the first thing that many of you started emailing was, okay, Trump is saying he's about to be arrested. Trump is saying, all these things, and we don't see those things happening. Now, Ms. Aurorah needs to explain to you exactly how this process works. And before I get into that, if you were looking for a handcuffed arrest and a mugshot splattered all over the internet, you know that was not going to happen. Now, if it was Obama, had it been Obama, what? We would have seen him marched out with a platoon. Okay, handcuffed behind his back, mugshot everywhere. You would have seen that. In this case, no, we did not see that. Okay, I did read somewhere where he was fingerprinted. I do not know if that is true. Okay, let me not get excited because, first, let's do this because I'm going to answer your questions. Let's watch the clip of the district attorney and what he says about why it is he was able to bring these charges forward today.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here today. Earlier this afternoon, Donald Trump was arraigned on a New York Supreme Court indictment returned by a Manhattan grand jury on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records in the first degree. Under New York state law, it is a felony to falsify business records with intent to defraud and an intent to conceal another crime. That is exactly what this case is about. 34 false statements made to cover up other crimes. These are felony crimes in New York State, no matter who you are. We cannot and will not normalize serious criminal conduct. The defendant repeatedly made false statements on New York business records. He also caused others to make false statements. The defendant claimed that he was paying Michael Cohen for legal services performed in 2017. This simply was not true. And it was a false statement that the defendant made month after month in 2017.
Make a W.
April, May, June, and so on through the rest of the year. For 9 straight months, the defendant held documents in his hand containing this key lie, that he was paying Michael Cohen for legal services performed in 2017. And he personally signed checks for payments to Michael Cohen for each of these 9 months. In total, the grand jury found there were 34 documents with this critical false statement. Why did Donald Trump repeatedly make these false statements? The evidence will show that he did so to cover up crimes relating to the 2016 election. Donald Trump, executives at the publishing company American Media Incorporated, Mr. Cohen, and others agreed in 2015 to a catch and kill scheme. That is, a scheme to buy and suppress negative information to help Mr. Trump's chance of winning the election. As part of this scheme, Donald Trump and others made 3 payments to people who claimed to have negative information about Mr. Trump. To make these payments, they set up shell companies, and they made yet more false statements, including, for example, in AMI, American Media Incorporated's business records. One of the 3 people that they paid to keep quiet was a woman named Stormy Daniels. Less than 2 weeks before the presidential election, Michael Cohen wired $130,000 to Stormy Daniels' lawyer. That payment was to hide damaging information from the voting public. The participant scheme was illegal. The scheme violated New York election law, which makes it a crime to conspire to promote a candidacy by unlawful means. The $130,000 wire payment exceeded the federal campaign contribution cap, and the false statements in AMI's books violated New York law. That is why Mr. Trump made false statements about his payments to Mr. Cohen. He could not simply say that the payments were a reimbursement for Mr. Cohen's payments to Stormy Daniels. To do so, to make that true statement, would have been to admit a crime. So instead, Mr. Trump said that he was paying Mr. Cohen for fictitious legal services in 2017 to cover up actual crime committed the prior year. And in order to get Michael Cohen his money back, they planned one last false statement. In order to complete the scheme today is one with allegations like so many of our white-collar cases. Allegations that someone lied again and again to protect their interests and evade the laws to which we are all held accountable. As this office has done time and time again, we today uphold our solemn responsibility to ensure that everyone stands equal before the law. No amount of money and no amount of power changes that enduring American principle. I'll now take questions.
So we're going to take a limited number of questions. There are no follow-up questions. One question to the reporter. I will call on you. And again, we have limited time. Thank you. The first question will be Rick.
Thank you. Rick Davis, why now? I mean, some argue that this is a political move. You're not known to be a political person. The floodgates are going to go into
We conducted a thorough and rigorous investigation, as we're known to do, at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I've been doing this for 24 years and am no stranger to rigorous, complex investigations. I bring cases when they're ready. Having now conducted a rigorous, thorough investigation, the case was ready to be brought, and it was brought.
Mr. Bragg, the indictment says that there were 34 false business records. And they would never conceal another crime, but the indictment does not specifically say what those crimes were. We are assuming, perhaps, that they might be election-related. I'm wondering if you can specify what laws were also broken.
Sure. So let me say as an initial matter that the indictment doesn't specify that because the law does not so require. In my remarks, I mentioned a couple of laws, which I will highlight again now. The first is New York State election law, which makes it a crime to conspire to promote a candidacy by unlawful means. I further indicated a number of unlawful means, including more additional false statements, including statements that were planned to be made to tax authorities. I also noted the federal election law cap on contribution limits.
But why weren't there those crimes charged falsely charged with those crimes?
Well, I'm not going to go into our deliberative process on what was brought. The charges that were brought were the ones that were brought. The evidence in the law is the basis for those decisions.
Hi, Mr. DA. You had expressed a year ago that you had some reservations about the case's readiness. Can you talk to us about what were some of the questions in your mind that needed to be answered in order to bring a case of this magnitude?
I'm not going to go chapter and verse into any thinking. What I will say is, I believe the time period you're talking about, I've been in office for a couple of months. The investigation, in my view, was not concluded into the conduct in particular that is the basis for the charges today. Since that time, we've had more evidence made available to the office and opportunity to meet with additional witnesses. So, as I said earlier, I've been doing this for 24 years. I don't bring cases prior to a thorough and rigorous investigation. Now, having done so, the case has been brought.
Mr. Brad, Garrett Hake with NBC News. Your predecessor took a hard look at this case and decided not to charge it. Federal prosecutors took a hard look at this case and decided not to charge it. Do you believe you have new evidence that led you to decide to charge this, or why now?
Well, as I just mentioned, we have had available to the office additional evidence that was not in the office's possession prior to my time here. And as to your part of your question about the federal, we have a distinct and strong, I would say profound, independent interest in New York State. This is the business capital of the world. We regularly do cases involving false business statements. The bedrock, in fact, the basis for business integrity and a well-functioning business marketplace is true and accurate record keeping. That's the charge that's brought here, falsifying New York State business records.
We're gonna take two more. Yeah.
Thank you. DA Brad, I'm just going to read back one line from your statement of facts. The participants also took steps that mischaracterized for tax purposes the true nature of payments and furtherance of the scheme. You allege former President Trump was one of the participants who mischaracterized the payments for tax purposes.
I'm not going to go beyond the plain language statement of facts, which I think speaks for itself.
Sheena.
Hey, Brad, can you please comment on the strength of the evidence that Trump personally intended to violate state election law, including actions that are charged in the indictment?
So the charge is falsifying business records. The charge requires, as I specified, criminal conduct that was concealed. One of the concealed crimes we allege is New York State election law. I sort of went through, and our statement of facts, which I think many of you have in front of you, goes through things including, text messages, emails, contemporaneous phone records, multiple witnesses. All of that will be, as you saw in the fall, borne out in a public courtroom in downtown Manhattan.
Last question is Jonah.
So, DA Bragg, the charges are related to the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. The release from your office also mentions another woman, Karen McDougal, as well as a doorman. Can you comment on how those players are related to the charges you've brought or to the case overall?
I'm glad you put your finger on that, because it's not just about one payment. It is 34 business records, 34 false statements in business records that were concealing criminal conduct. And the earlier question about New York State election law, when I talked about conspiracy to promote a candidacy by unlawful means. Those unlawful means, we allege, include the conduct set forth in the statement of facts, which is additional false statements separate and apart from the charged ones in AMI documents, planned false statements to taxing authorities. It is not just that one $130,000 wire payment. Thanks so much.
All right, before Mr. Aurorah gets into commenting on what we just saw and heard, I want to take it back to give the security entrepreneurs who were emailing these questions some clarity, because the main question that was emailed, and I want to thank you all for emailing, please continue to do so at info@AurorahDeyConsulting.com, was, and we heard this in this clip, the one reporter who was asking the district attorney, how is it that individuals prior to him felt like there was not enough evidence to support any type of investigation going further to an indictment, anything like that? Why is it that now you have been able to do this? It was there new evidence, all of these things. You heard the reporter asking him. Okay, now I want these security entrepreneurs to understand the process. Okay, this is a grand jury process. So what happens is the prosecutor must bring evidence to 23 residents. Okay, 23 people. All right. And a simple majority vote determines whether there will be an indictment or whether there will not be an indictment. Okay. So that means in this situation, there was enough evidence for at least 12 people to say, yes, there should be an indictment. We see crimes. We see things that would be considered crimes in the state of New York, because what did the district attorney say? These are crimes in the state of New York. These things are illegal in the state of New York. And he said that a few times, right? So, like, I was glued to what the district attorney was saying, because when I saw Trump in the court, right, and I have a lot of compassion for anyone who has to go through any type of trial, because you are having your Jesus moment. What did I just tell you? 12 people. It only takes 12 people to say, you're it, buddy. Okay? And then a jury of 12 gets to decide your fate. That is frightening for anyone. Just the stress, the humiliation, the shame, all of the things that go along with having to go through any type of court proceeding for anything that you may or may not have done. Okay. And we see that many people don't survive. People don't make it. They don't either live through it or they die shortly after. And we've seen this many times in the public. Many times this has happened, right? So we know that he's looking like himself, but he's under a great amount of stress. Okay, and I'm going to get into some other things, right? So now, after the grand jury says, okay, there's going to be an indictment, right? Now, the defendant has the opportunity to voluntarily surrender, or, yes, the person is arrested. Now, we did not see former President Donald Trump be arrested. We did not see that. So clearly, he voluntarily surrendered, right? Okay, so we have a voluntary surrendering. However, the normal process is that, yes, the defendant would be fingerprinted and photographed, as Ms. Aurorah just said. We have not seen any photographs, which is why I said possibly he was not fingerprinted. I don't know, right? But that's the normal process, right? Okay, so we saw we understand all of that happened. Then we saw the arraignment, right? That is the public court appearance where the defendant gets to say, hey, listen, I'm guilty or I'm not guilty, right? Former President Donald Trump said that he is not guilty, right? All right, he's not guilty. That's what he says. Now, what happens next? As we know, right after, then the judge determines the defendant's bail or any type of restrictions that the defendant has to follow before trial. Now, there's a very interesting thing happening, and I want to get to that, but let me go on, right? So now after this, we know that the next pretrial court date is August the 8th. All right. So the defense now has the opportunity to file motions to dismiss charges or exclude evidence. Okay. Including any type of request to dismiss the case or set a different venue. Okay. And why is it that the actual next court date is on Miss Aurorah's birthday. I was like, uh-oh, this is deep. Okay, this is deep, because that is December 4th. And all of the secured entrepreneurs know that all Sagittarian fine folk are ruled by the planet Jupiter. Now, he's having this court date during a time when Jupiter is doing his thing for real. And what does Jupiter do? Jupiter will expand what already is, right? So I could really do a deep astrological dive on this court date and what could possibly happen. But we already know anything is possible. The other question that some of you had was, is this going to prevent him from running for president again? Okay, so far as we know, this particular situation, the way that it stands right now, does not prevent him from running for president at this time. He is still, I believe he's still campaigning. He's still doing his thing. Okay. We know that if the case coming out of Georgia for the tampering of the votes, right? That case in Georgia, if something comes out of that, I'm understanding that would be the reasoning for him not having the ability to run for president again. So that's the answer to that. Now let's move on to these other questions that you all had about the business documents. They're like, okay, former President Donald Trump is supposed to be the Dawn when it comes to business, right? So how is it that he's caught up with enough evidence, like we're saying here now, for this thing to be a situation where there were business documents that were said to be fraudulent? There are 34 counts, right? Is it 34 counts or 30 counts? 30 counts or 34 counts, right? Let's get into it. 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree with the intent to defraud and the intent to conceal other crimes. Okay, this is what you all were going on about, okay? You heard the district attorney tell us that this was what they call a catch and kill scheme to buy and suppress negative information. Now, this is the part that I was sharing with many of you. This is what we explain here in the Secured Entrepreneur Movement, the personal liability, how that's going to sting you every time. The district attorney said that there were 3 checks signed by former President Donald Trump. 3 checks, okay? Falsifying information as it relates to why Michael Cohen was paid. He stated that it was claimed that Michael Cohen was being paid for legal services, but in fact, that was fictitious. So he kept saying that the monies went to Michael Cohen for some fictitious legal services, right? Okay, secured entrepreneurs. Wait a moment, let me back it up, because the other thing that you all were getting on about was when the district attorney stated that shell companies were created to run this, what did he say? Catch and kill scheme, right? Catch and kill scheme. Now, we all know that there is nothing wrong with creating a shell corporate, none of that. Okay. The problem was that they now had the evidence to prove that the companies were created with the intention to defraud and conceal other crimes. Okay. I don't want the secured entrepreneurs to start going off the deep end. Now, yes, he did mention, and he said that they also found that there was a plan to falsify information to tax authorities. So it sounds to me like that's New York State tax, because I didn't hear anything about federal. I didn't hear anything about the Internal Revenue Service. He said tax authorities. We have to wait and see what that's about, okay? Because he also mentioned the overpayment to this Stormy Daniels and how that was over the campaign amount, something to that nature. Okay, so that's when you heard the reporter say it sounds like these other crimes have to do with this campaign money, the campaign money situation. Okay, and the district attorney said that's all going to be revealed. Okay, so I want the secure entrepreneurs to understand what we teach here, and that is staying away from personal liability. Okay, personal liability. He said former President Donald Trump signed 3 checks personally. My friend Michael would say, that dog don't hunt. Okay, like, now I got you dead to rights, because here's the 3 checks that you signed and the 34 falsified documents that go along with all of this. And what else did he say? Now, you only need 2 people to testify against you. We all know that, right? He said they have multiple witnesses, text messages, emails. Didn't Miss Aurorah make a video for the Secured Entrepreneur some time ago about being so careful with your emails, what you're communicating with people in emails? You think things are deleted. People save all of that. It is evidence, okay? So we must all be extremely mindful and careful, and there's a lot to learn from this case. And I'm definitely eager to hear about the other crimes, okay? Secured entrepreneurs, comment below. Let Miss Aurorah know what you think these other crimes are, okay? But most importantly, what we're really witnessing, because this is people feel like this is a real shame. Now, we have enough evidence to prove that, okay, you did some shaky things to get elected, because that's what the DA was saying, that these things, the reason why it's such a crime is because it all happened so that negative information wouldn't come out to deter former President Donald Trump's presidential campaign. Okay, we don't want all this information out here. We don't need all that, because we're running a campaign here. We're trying to be the president and all this stuff here, right? Okay. What we're understanding is that you cannot leave a paper trail. So now we got the paper trail, we got the emails, we got the text messages, and we got the witnesses. So many people. I'm really not sure how you're going to get around this. That's number one. Number two, because we got the personally signed checks, all the witnesses, all the evidence is there. That's why he said, and the case was brought, right? How is it then that a lot of people will still not see anything wrong with former President Donald Trump running for president again? That's where I want to leave it. All of what I heard the district attorney say, and we know that there's more to come once we get into the case. How is it that there are still so many people who don't have a problem with not only him running for president again, but voting for him to be the president? And Ms. Aurorah is not judging anybody or anything. Okay, I'm just observing everything, and we all know it's best to stick with what's going on in the state and the county that you live in. I'm most worried about the individuals who have authority in Clark County, okay, and the state of Nevada. I'm worried about the mayor. I'm worried about the governor here. I'm most worried about what's going to take place in the state that I reside in and all of these good things. Okay. So secured entrepreneurs, comment below. Let Miss Aurorah know what you think about the indictment, what went on during the arraignment, because I still was like, well, did he get bail? I couldn't get that straight. I couldn't get it straight as to what the outcome was, because he sure did get back on his jet. Okay. And you got to love that. You gotta love it. He went back and he left in style. Okay. The other thing that I was really disappointed about was how goofy his attorneys looked outside. They were like, oh, the judge said other crimes, but they never said the other crime. And they were just looking goofy. They were just sounding goofy. It was almost like we really don't know what to say. We're gonna say something. It's not gonna be intelligent. Like, to me, there was no intelligent rebuttal or comeback when you heard a former President Donald Trump's, well, that's a whole title. That's a whole title. And I also noticed that, this could be, putting some respect on his name and everything, but there are people who are still calling him the president. There are people who are still saying President Donald Trump. People on the news I'm talking about, that I saw them saying President Donald Trump. Total disregard for President Biden, right? I'm just watching this. I'm like, wow, this is a lot. So, all right, secured entrepreneurs, I hope I answered all the questions. And please, let's get into the conversation in the comments, all right? Now, you all know you can find Miss Aurorah at AurorahDayConsulting.com. And until next time, ta-ta.